Hey gang, welcome back to another riveting installment in Conquering Your Commander. This week we take a gander at the Mad Machinist. This is Mishra, Artificer Prodigy. Costing 1 colorless, 1 blue, 1 black, and 1 red, Mishra is a pretty average creature with only 4 power and 4 toughness. His ability, with a glance, seems pointless and irrelevant to EDH. I mean, we only run 1 copy of a spell, how can we expect to tutor for another in our deck if we're already casting it? Well, buckle up buckaroos, because this is where things get hectic. Since Mishra's ability immediately goes in the stack as soon as our artifact spell does, one of 3 things will happen. First, if our opponent doesn't counter our spell, our artifact resolves. Enough said. Second, if our opponent does counter the spell, because the counter resolves first, we get to search our hand, library, or the most important place, the graveyard. Basically what this means is that barring a counter that exiles, all of our artifacts are virtually uncounterable. Lastly, the third mode for his ability comes into effect when we run something that allows us to steal cards from our opponent's library. Naturally, we could steal something like a Soul Ring, cast that opponent's Soul Ring, and then go tutor for our own Soul Ring. That's not too bad for 1 mana investment plus whatever you use to steal the spell with. Hopefully my explanation has piqued your interest as to why anyone would run Mishra, so let's take a look at some potential inclusions for the deck. With its recent unbanning, Metalworker is probably one of the best creatures for Mishra to include. He'll enable some enormous mana generation, and will often come down early enough to be relevant. His price tag is a bit steep, but the speed and consistency he will bring to your deck is well worth the cost. Herald of Kozilek is a neat new addition from Battle for Zendikar. He can help reduce the cost of many, if not all of the spells in our deck. He acts like a second, albeit more expensive to cast copy of Ethereum Sculptor. He has the added benefit of reducing Eldrazi spells as well, if that's a route you want to go down. Goblin Welder is just an incredible card for any deck that is based on artifacts. I've covered him in my earlier Duretti deck tech, and he is to no one's surprise just as good here as he is in that deck. Platinum Angel is primarily a defensive spell for our deck. It can enable us to allow creatures to go through their blocking at no cost to our chances of winning. She's expensive to cast, but you'll most likely be running a multitude of ways to cheat her out early. Speaking of cheating out artifacts early, you're going to want to run what I call the Transmutation Trio. Arkham Dagsum, Master Transmuter, and Museo Visionary Architect round with this powerful threesome, all of whom are included in our deck to either tutor out or cheat out artifacts for a fraction of their cost. I would highly recommend including some, if not all, of these cards. The bread and butter for a deck will always come in the form of artifacts. Mana rocks in particular are very powerful, allowing us to ramp early on. I would strongly consider running at least 5 mana rocks, with Chromatic Lantern being of the utmost importance, which I'll get into later. You can also consider running cards that will help reduce the cost of artifacts, like Cloud Key and Semblance Anvil. The majority of artifacts we'll be running are very good at their original mana cost, but can be downright broken when you've reduced them by 2 or more colorless mana per. I'd also consider running Mindslaver and Helm of Obedience. Sure, winning through combo can be kinda lame sometimes, but you always want to have a plan B or plan C in your deck, just in case your main route doesn't always work out. Remember how I said that reducing the cost of our artifacts is good? Well, Blood Funnel is another cost reducer. Who cares if our spells get countered? Most of the time it's an artifact, so we'll be coming back with Mishra anyway. Leyline of the Void is a card I would include if you're running Helm of Obedience. It'll kill at least 1 opponent per turn, provided you're lacking any ways to untap it on your own turn. Planar Chaos and its more expensive older brother Nether Void are universal counter effects. Since we care very little if our artifacts get countered and go to the graveyard, these enchantments can provide an almost stacks-like effect that can be difficult for our opponents to overcome. Ice Cave is a card I'd love to find so that I can include it in my deck. It's the primary reason that we would run Chromatic Lantern, since with the changes to the rules, we can now tap our lands for any color and counter any spell we need. Since Mishra cares very little about his artifacts being countered, this can be a very one-sided enchantment that can help us prevent game-winning spells from being cast. Lastly, Possibility Storm is as broken as anything can be in Mishra. We can deny our opponents the opportunity to cast what they want, while at the same time enabling us to cast 1 artifact and still get the same one for the price of our initial cost. Sure, we won't be certain of what the second one is, but can you really complain about it when you get it for free? Fabricate is pretty much a no-brainer for any deck that is both blue and runs strong artifacts. Praetor's Grasp is one of those cards that'll let us steal things that I mentioned earlier. Depending on what turn it is in the game, my choices will usually go like this. Early game, I'd say I'd steal a Soul Ring and get my own or a Mana Rock. Mid game, I'd probably get something bigger, maybe like Gilded Lotus. Late game, it's time to see if our opponents play Blightsteel Colossus. Scrap Mastery is a great card for us. It can often be a one-sided Living Death, which is already a spell that's good enough to run even when our opponents get stuff back. For instance, there's nothing really special that I'd recommend here. I'd say you'll probably want to run the usual suspects with stuff like counterspells and Cyclonic Rift. Blue is probably one of the least exciting things when it comes to diversity in the form of instant spells. Sorry. The two main Planeswalkers that I'd recommend are Duretti's Scrap Savant and Tezzeret the Seeker. These both interact favorably with artifacts and can support our deck either by tutoring, returning, or accelerating for our game enders. Not just for thematic points, but also for fun, I'd probably run all of the artifact lands that you can find. They can be tutored for with Tezzeret and can act as sack fodder for abilities later on in the game. Phyrexia's Core is a great way to gain a little bit of life and save a crucial artifact from being exiled. Buried Ruin is its counterpart, and is also a great colorless land that can also act as a one-time spell later on to return an artifact to our hand. However, the most exciting new land for the deck, I think, is Mage Ring Network. I'm sure you've seen other storage lands, but for the first time we have access to a colorless one. Sure, this is probably better in a mono brown deck, but if we have nothing better to do with our mana, I can think of worse ways than saving it up for later. Well my friends, those are a few cards that I consider running in Mishra Artificer Prodigy. I had to look that up online to figure out how to say it. Themed EDH deck. I know Grixis doesn't tend to be what comes to mind when you think artifacts and 3-colored generals, but I think you should really give them a shot. If you already do play Mishra, please let me know what you run in your deck. I'd love to see your comments and your suggestions down below. As always, thank you all for watching, and be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to my videos.